Hey everybody, I'm Elizabeth Nader and welcome to the Meet the Candidates Forum for the Mountain Lakes Borough Council. I am thrilled to have everybody here. If you're listening now, you're probably already on replay. If you're on replay, go ahead, comment below, ask questions. We're going to go back and watch this. So we appreciate any comments, any questions that you have. The rest of you are jumping on with us now on Facebook. We're also on YouTube Live. So welcome everybody. Now, know that I'll be watching for your questions. I will work them in as I can where appropriate. So ask away. The candidates are here to answer any questions that you have. So before I introduce our candidates, and as everyone is getting on the feed, I see people joining. That's great. I want to be, really mindful with you of something that's so important. The reason we're doing this is the importance of local politics. Right now there's a lot of noise out there with this election cycle more than ever. But the truth is, it is so crucial that we pay attention to what's going on in our towns and who we're putting into council seats, because that affects your daily life more than anything. The positions that are taken by your council members affect everything that happens to you and how you experience the future of your town. So get to know your candidates, choose wisely, and that's why we are here tonight. So let's get on with this important evening. We've got a lot of people online already, which is so exciting. So I would like to introduce to all of you Mountain Lakes Borough Council candidates, Chris Richter, Jane Howard, Richard Barkoskas, and Nate Fitch. Guys, welcome to the forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be a part of this. We're going to begin with a get to know you round. So we're going to go through several issues and have each of you weigh in. But right now we want all of the Mountain Lakes residents who don't know you well at this point to get to know you better. So I want you to talk about a little bit about your background and really why you're so passionate about serving on the Borough Council. So I want to start with Chris.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks everybody for joining and trying to learn about our platform and who we are. So, Chris Richter, 30-year resident of Mountain Lakes, married to Marcy Richter for 31 years, 3 great kids, Callie, Colette, and Kevin, all born and raised in Mountain Lakes and graduating Mountain Lakes High School. I'm a licensed planner, engineer, and construction manager, having been involved in the commercial real estate business for over 35 years. I've attended University of Vermont, Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering, and Stevens with a Master's in Science in Civil Engineering. As far as my volunteer spirit in Mountain Lakes, I've served on the Board of Adjustment for 17 years. I've been chairman for the last 8 years, and I also serve on the EDAC since its inception, both during this last administration for the last 3 years and prior to that. So coached every sport known to mankind, and I love this town. As far as why I'm running for council, it's because I love this town and I want to stay in this town. As many families know, that when your youngest kid graduates high school, you look to move. You look to get away from the tax burden that exists in this town and go to lower tax communities. I want to stay. I have a plan on how to lower our taxes and increase our home values, and that's why I'm running.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Chris. Jane, tell us all about your background and why you're so excited about this.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. I'm Jane Hayward, and I've been a Mountain Lakes resident for more than 18 years. I have 2 children. Caitlin, who is grown and launched, as they say, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my son Luke, who's 17 and a junior at Mountain Lakes High School. For more than a decade, I've served the Mountain Lakes community as the chair of the Mountain Lakes Day, as well as chaired the steering committee for the centennial year. In my professional career, I work as a senior project manager in the pharmaceutical industry, and I have a proven track record of managing high volume projects that are on time and within budget. And I'll bring that experience with me to the Borough Council. And I'm running for Borough Council because, like many of you, I love this town. But during the past 4 years, I've seen an overall decline in the way our town is managed, and that really upsets me. I've seen our taxes increase, borough spending increase, and home values decrease. that upsets me. So I've decided to step up and volunteer to reverse that change and restore fiscal responsibility and accountability back to Mountain Lakes.
Great. Thank you, Jane, so much. Richard, you are next.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I have lived in Mountain Lakes for 17 years and am a proud third-generation Laker. Mountain Lakes is the only place I've ever truly called home. And I know Mountain Lakes is a place that prioritizes volunteerism, encouraging all of its citizens, no matter what age, to engage in the community in any way they can. A place that's deeply passionate about preserving our parks, our lakes, and our community character. A place that is, above all else, a home. And not just for those of us here now, but for the next generation to come as well. And in the last few years, we've seen Mountain Lakes go from a multi-generational community to a transactional one. We should want families moving here who want to plant roots for their children, not who simply view our town as a vehicle to send their kids to college and leave. But the only way we can do this is if we give them a reason to stay. And in the last few years, financially, we have not given them that reason. In fact, we've probably been active in causing them to leave. Being a Laker is so much more than just wearing orange and blue. It means being passionate and caring about everything that our town has to offer. Our lakes, our beaches, our schools, our sports, but most importantly, our people. Mountain Lakes is so much more than a town. It's our home. And it's time we start making our home a place people want their kids to stay and not a place they feel like they have to leave.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard, so much. And last but certainly not least, Nate, tell us all about you.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for everyone who's joining us tonight. Nate Fitch, I'm running for Borough Council. I have a wife, Sarah, who we've been married for a very long time. We have 3 children. I'm actually going to have 1 kid in each school this year, 1 in Wildwood, 1 in Briarcliff, 1 in the high school. My profession has developed into basically consulting. So I go around to do project management. I worked for Big Four Consulting, working with Fortune 100 companies, doing ROIs, cost-effective planning for the technology, how do you go to market, and doing the executive level technology pitches to those companies. Recently, you might know me because I've actually been working with the school district here. Had an opportunity they needed some help, and I had the opportunity to kind of roll up my sleeves and help our the local community. I also volunteer on the fire department in town. So we're 100% volunteer fire department, as most of the departments are around this area. And so for over 10 years, I've been on that department, active in reaching out to the community, doing things like directing traffic to going into burning buildings, or just helping someone who's confused, maybe scared about something that's going on in their house. And we enjoy that. And I enjoy giving back to the community. And one of the reasons I decided to get involved here is I have seen the last couple of years, I feel like the direction of the town is going where, the grass is getting tall in the parks, and certain things, basic maintenance isn't getting done. The streets aren't getting swept. It took 4+ weeks to get the brush from the last storm out in front of my house. And now it looks like fall before fall really got here. I have all the leaves out there. And then what really kind of got me is some ideas were getting shopped around town about some economic development that I didn't think was so responsible, which is contrary to what we're moving with on this platform. And I wanted to get involved. I wanted to see what was happening. And the more I looked, the more I decided I needed to get involved and to help. I plan on being here for at least over 20 years. And if we're successful, longer. I love this town. I've been coming here for 20 years off and on. My wife, 3 of her younger sisters went through school here and graduated from here. So I've been coming to this town for over 20 years, even though we've only lived here for about 12. And when we had a chance to move up to New Jersey from Texas, I was like, we're going to Mountain Lakes. I love this town, and I want to see it grow, and I want to see it do well. And that's why I'm here tonight.
Awesome. Well, you guys all have incredible experience and passion for this community, which is so important. So let's dig into some of these issues. You guys have touched on some of them. We're going to specifically go through some of these. It's important for residents to understand what your views are and what you will bring to the town. So first, we're going to talk about economic development, which of course, fiscal responsibility is a big topic for town management. We're talking about ratables, economic development, property taxes. There's so much about fiscal management that's key. So we're going to start, Chris, with you. You have a lot of background in this area. Tell us how you look at this issue in Mountain Lakes.
Sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. So one of the cornerstones on our platform is generating revenues for this town. As a backdrop, Mountain Lakes has not had a single commercial development over 20 years. Our master plan calls for us to redevelop 46, and yet little has done. I have over 35 years in real estate development and serving on the Economic Development Advisory Committee. I've been fortunate enough to have development relationships that have initiated and moved the two major projects forward, which is the Sunrise Assisted Living and the Wawa Hotel site, both on the 46 corridor. There's this misperception in the development world that free markets work. Well, they haven't worked in Mountain Lakes, and it's taken a lot of legwork and begging. I'll use the word begging to get developers to come to this town. The work achieved to date, and I want to read a quote to you guys from the assisted living developer Vision, which is one of the biggest taxpayers in town. And it says, on behalf of Vision Real Estate Partners, we'd like to let the residents of Mountain Lakes know how instrumental the EDC was in our decision to move forward with the Sunrise Assisted Living Facility Development Project. The EDAC leadership, provided by Chris Richter, gave us the confidence that our development was a viable option. From the beginning, we were provided clear direction on the necessary zoning modifications and plan revisions required to bring the project into compliance with the needs of the borough, yet at the same time maintaining the integrity of the project for our client. It's a great asset to the community to have EDAC leadership like Chris Richter, who has decades of real estate development experience. His combination of real-world experience and relationships in the development community, combined with his ability to clearly understand all aspects of the regulatory process, affords the borough the ability to achieve best-in-class development projects resulting in quality tax revenues. That is skill set that is needed to bring not just these two projects forward, but more. I think when we look at our town, we are scraping nickels together to meet our budgets every year. We need revenue. The only place we're going to get revenue is by additional ratables. These two projects alone will generate close to $50 million in additional assessed value, which will correlate to roughly $1 million in additional revenue. Myself, along with Richard, Nate, and Jane, this is to me is the tip of the iceberg. We're begging the folks of Mountain Lakes to realize that you've got to look at this campaign as a job candidate, and you need the folks with the right skill sets to be in place to do the job that has to get done. And if it's generating ratables, that's our team. One other additional comment on this issue is that even after I brought the assisted living to the table, and if you review the meeting minutes from December 4th of 2017, you'll see I authored an ordinance and presented to the council liaison at that point in time. The ordinance to allow the assisted living as permitted use was not adopted until 11 months later. And that's just unconscionable. That project, I work development projects in Northern Minnesota, should have taken 3 or 4 months. That extra 6 months of delays is that there was a direct function of council's inability to understand the land development process and what they should be doing, cost the taxpayers of Mountain Lakes over $250,000.
Wow.
The Wawa on the hotel has been delayed by over 1.5 years. That's like $500,000 in lost tax revenues. So we as a community, we've got to get the people in town that know development and get these projects these have to be the right projects for Mountain Lakes. Get them done, get them shovel ready, get them paying their taxes.
Okay, so we have some development questions, but before I get to those, I want each of the other candidates to weigh in quickly on this issue. Jane, can you go next, please?
Yeah, Chris, I agree 100% with you and support you in that effort. But we also have to be mindful as a community and as a council that bringing in rateables is fabulous, but it's not a reason for us to spend more. That money that we bring in on rateables, it needs to go to reduce our tax burden. It's not a reason or a blank check to go and spend more money on other projects. And I think we all agree about that, and we know we'll do that day one if elected to Borough Council.
Richard, can you speak to the economic development issue, please?
Sure. I think Jane hit it right on the head. Rateables should be used first and foremost, full stop, to stop the increases of taxes and to cap spending. Look, spending's gone up 16% in the last 4 years. And I think Chris has the message perfectly said. Bringing in these new commercial rateables is the best way to stop the continued increase in spending. And that's what this team's going to do.
Okay, great. Nate, can you weigh in? And when you do, please, will you answer one of the questions specifically to you, which is, what are some of the examples of irresponsible economic development that you mentioned in your intro?
Sure. So one of the ideas, and this is kind of, again, what kind of pushed me over to say, hey, I got to get involved, is the Midvale area down here with Midvale and Morris. And this is an area that I live in. And one of the ideas that was getting shopped around was the idea of putting in, a 4-story building across the street from me with, parking garages underneath, some, 90 units, I forget the exact number, of townhouses, taking out the hillside where the steps are coming up to put businesses in, the post office, take that away, and across the street from the post office, and just turning this into this huge downtown where I would envision traffic lights on Morris. At Midvale, just to handle the additional traffic load. And that's not what we're talking about as a team here. And when Chris is talking about economic development, that's not what he's talking about. There needs to be some modest development. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be some, townhouses, some nice townhouses go in down here or something like that. But we want to do two things. The first is we want to maintain the integrity and the welcome, warming, small town charm of Mountain Lakes. We don't want to come in and all of a sudden turn this into some other town. We want to do responsible. We really want to look at 46 and develop that. So when we're driving through along 46, it doesn't look like, we've taken a wrong turn and we're somewhere in, north central Pennsylvania. And I can say that because I'm from northwestern Pennsylvania. But it needs, the 46 corridor has a lot of untapped potential for these rateables. And we want to maintain that and develop that responsibly and also get the feedback. Number two is work with the communities. Not just go off, and all of us are in agreement, not just to go off and make these decisions for the town. It's to spearhead this, to drive this, to in many senses, project management while we're getting feedback from the residents on what works and what doesn't.
Okay, so that kind of feeds into a question we got just before we went live, which I'm going to throw to Chris. Which areas of Mountain Lakes do you think are in need of further development and why? And kind of piggybacking on what Nate said, when considering to rezone and develop those areas, how will you get and consider input from residents?
Thank you. Clearly, Route 46 is the focus. Both the assisted living and the Wawa Hotel are on the 46 corridor. When we did the Sunrise and I discussed the project and the details of the site plan, I've done over 1,000, the design over 1,000 site plans in my life. We were very sensitive to the residential needs, and that project is a win-win for this town. As it relates to other focal points in town, the Midvale area is definitely going to be a topic of conversation. Outside of that, I'll call it the RA, and the RA zone is off limits. That's where we live. Right. And we don't need to touch those areas. We have the ability to generate with these two, with the assisted living and Wawa hotel projects, say that's 50 million. We can easily generate another $50 million in rateables along the Route 46 corridor to get that up to about a $2.5 million cash infusion into our budget. 420 Boulevard, where the old tennis courts are, they are looking to redevelop that site. We have inquiries about a Starbucks in town. And these are folks that are just calling me. They're not calling council. They're calling Chris Richter because, we'll ask them. But there is plenty of untapped potential. One of the sensitive properties is the property on the westbound 46 at the very western limits of town, which was proposed to be rezoned to a D parcel. That's a parcel that we met with those neighbors. If we're elected, the first thing I'm going to do is get a meeting with that neighborhood, sit down and talk to them about what do they feel is a reasonable development for that town. So when we talk about the rezoning process, it is embedded with transparency pursuant to the municipal land use law. But clearly, we need to go a step above and beyond that. Is when we look to rezone the property, do a little better job of outreach to the community and saying, this is what we're planning on. Let's engage in a conversation. Let's go forward.
Okay, now there is a question about giving tax breaks to lure projects to Route 46. Anyone want to weigh in on that?
I'm sorry, tax breaks?
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no tax breaks to any of the properties. We've never proposed that. The only way there'd be a tax break is through if we do a redevelopment plan, and that hasn't been discussed at all. And that's through a pilot program. But there was absolutely no tax break for any of the properties on 46. They will pay.
Go ahead.
If I can just add on to what Chris said earlier about the westbound Route 46 property. When we went over and we talked to those residents one evening, they told us that they were informed about the potential rezoning less than 48 hours in advance of the meeting. And they, to their credit, rallied the troops and showed up at the meeting and got it voted down. But all of these projects, whether it's through economic development or we're talking about, later topics like shared services, these are all examples of how the current council is not being transparent with the community. Like Chris said, the very first thing that should have been done when anyone was even considering rezoning or developing that property was bring in the community members and have a discussion. And that's what we're going to do if elected. We're going to, from day one, have discussions with every single member of the community because we don't want any more decisions and projects made behind closed doors. We are for transparency, and that is the cornerstone of fiscal responsibility.
Okay, great. Now, I have a lot of questions about development, and some of these I'm going to ask that the candidates go back onto the forum when we are done and answer some of them directly. But I do want to ask just a couple more, if you will. We have a question here about rezoning, since we've mentioned that. Are you guys going to be in favor of rezoning current residential districts from single household properties to multi-family properties, townhouses, et cetera? Who wants to weigh in on that?
I'll answer that. The answer is no. The only piece of single family zone property is the particular property on Route 46, which is zoned single family. And the proposal, and this came from EDAC, was to say any properties on 46 should be commercial in nature. Now, we can do very low intensity commercial, and that's the conversation. If elected, I'll engage with that conversation to say very low intensity, but we should not have a family home fronting on 46. And I think that's just sound planning. As a planner, that's planning 101. You don't put single family on a high volume highway. There are no other properties in town that are zoned single family that we would look for townhouses. There is going to be a discussion at the end of our conversation about the Mountain Lakes Club, but that has nothing to do with zoning for townhouses. That has to do with saving the club.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about taxes a little bit while we stay in economic development just a little bit longer. Obviously, this is a very big issue for any resident. And one question is, can you get into specifics about recent tax increases that were mentioned? My understanding is that this increase was due solely to the school budget, not borough spending.
Yeah, so that's not accurate. So yes, the school board substantially impacted the tax increase. But the borough spending, as you've heard, has gone from, I think, 8.7 million to 10.1 million since 2017. So that's just not, and that's just the municipal component of the spending.
Right.
Board of Ed, clearly a separate issue there, went up like $1 million. So, but no, the component of borough spending has gone up from 8.7 to 10.1.
Yeah, and we're going to see more increasing, and now that we've got the borough renovation project, that was a $4.5 million bond that's the council just recently approved. And, that was based on an architect's estimate. Anyone in commercial construction will tell you that that's not the way to price the commercial construction project. And quite honestly, we should have learned our lesson from the Mountain Lakes High School construction project, which was priced the same way. And now we're seeing cost overruns on that project and possibly increased taxes. So, no one on the current council, as Chris has said, has commercial construction experience. Their plan right now is to use DPW staff as the construction crew for our renovation, which we don't agree with. So, our plan is to actually revisit that construction plan and develop a budget that's actually based on contractor estimates, not an architect's estimation of what they think the project will cost.
Okay, we will actually get into that, Jane, in a little bit. We're going to do that as a separate issue. I think it's a very important one, and I want you to weigh in on that again so that people understand, how key that is. I want to just ask one more question on property taxes, though, and the question is there any plan for relief of the current residential taxes?
Well, the relief is, and the relief is when we get $1 million in additional tax revenue, that $1 million goes right to the bottom line. I mean, we all know that there's cost of living increases and there's going to be pressure on the cost side, which is inevitable. The revenue has to outpace those costs exponentially. So there's a net, our position is clear. I think, Richard, everyone said it. The money we generate from additional tax revenues is going to go directly to decreasing our taxes, period.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Nate, did you want to weigh in on that?
No, I mean, I didn't have much to add. I'm in full support of that. It's, the spending, as Chris said, went up. But, my taxes went up too. So we need to be a little bit better about where we're putting this money and be more conscientious of, we got more money and we get to spend more. That's not necessarily the way we like things to go.
Okay. So go ahead.
Just one quick point. Like we said, if we know going in that the Board of Ed is going to take a large amount of the money from the town, and our taxes are going to primarily go there, that means even more so we need to be efficient as a council in how we evaluate and manage the funds. Now look at Livingston, for example. Because of COVID, Livingston decided to reevaluate their entire budget to minimize the impact on the residents. And what did we do? We decided to increase spending
to
an all-time high, like Chris said. And did I cut out there for a second?
That's okay. You're fine now.
Oh, well, like I said, it went up from 8.7 to 10.1. What that tells me is that we have mismanagement going on in the borough and people who are not properly evaluating how every dollar should be spent. We need to be efficient and we need to be fiscally responsible.
Okay, great. So we do have some other questions in that area. We'll either get back to them at the end or I'll ask that the candidates please go online and answer those directly. But Jane, I want to go back to your issue about the Borough Hall. We have the $4.5 million bond, and the issue now is how this work gets completed. Of course, any commercial construction project is always fraught with issues with budget and schedule, especially if you don't put the right people on it. So I want you to go back to that, if you would, please, and weigh in on that issue.
Yeah, sure. And as a team, we talked about this, how there's no experience whatsoever on current council with commercial construction. And the fact that we went ahead and issued a bond, $4.5 million on an architect's estimate and not on real costs. And, that process was used for the Mountain Lakes High School construction process, that same pricing model. And we're into cost overruns already on that project. Okay. That's not how to run a commercial construction project. Okay. And this team has, we have the commercial construction experience. We have the oversight with budget management and financial oversight in all of our professional careers. So we plan to revisit that overall plan and budget and get in there and get real, just get in there and start taking a look at this and see what's really feasible, what's really necessary. And let's see, we don't necessarily have to spend that $4.5 million just because it's there. Okay. And then, the fact that our current council is then even considering having our DPW crew run the construction project. Let's hire local contractors who do this for a living every single day, and let our DPW crew do the job that they were paid, that they were hired to do, and that's to maintain our town. Okay. And then, bring in some residents who have experience in commercial construction project management. We've got lots of people who have that experience. Chris can attest to that, who are willing to step up and form a committee that will report to the Borough Council and help us to bring oversight and financial oversight, especially, to that project.
Great. Okay, Nate, can you weigh in on this issue as well, please?
Yeah. So in my experience, when I owned a small business some years ago, and I was fortunate enough to be involved with planning and helping finance that building that I moved my business into. And I've built some other, been involved with some other commercial constructions, and the architect's estimates, I mean, they just aren't very reliable. And typically, if you go into a project that you think is going to cost X, you can just about guarantee it's going to cost X plus Y, and it's going to get out of control. The other thing I learned when I was running a small business is it's very easy to say, oh, I'll do the work. And Mountain Lakes is very much a small business. It's, it's $10 million. And so it's easy to say, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this. I can save money doing this, doing that. But if you're doing those things, you're not doing your primary job, right? You're not running your primary business. And that's what I kind of see happening with the DPW lately. I mean, these guys, they were hired to come in and cut the grass and maintain the parks and take care of the streets and, clean up leaves. And after storms, they're doing that while they're doing these construction projects. And it's like, we're not staffed for that. And I just see it kind of getting away and not improving. So if we're going to now all of a sudden use these same individuals to do construction, additionally, in addition to, what we've just used them for at the beaches, I just see, 4 more years of things not getting done around town that we need to get done that affect our home values, that affect our comfort of living in this town, and why we pay these taxes.
Right. Okay, Richard, can you weigh in? And then I'm going to go to Chris on this issue and we'll move on.
Absolutely. I think the Borough Hall is a prime example of, again, just lack of transparency. In the same meeting where the final presentation came for the borough, before the borough on Borough Hall, they opened it up to the public, and on the same agenda, they had an ordinance discussion. This was already a done deal. The public comments were nothing but symbolic. And this is an example of needing to have a frank discussion about what we want versus what we need. We need Borough Hall to be up to a certain code, and we know that. So come to us and tell us, what do we need for it to be up to code? And then once we've had that discussion, we can have a talk about some of the other things you want on Borough Hall. We need to update the building. We don't need to spend $4.5 million.
Chris, can you answer this question about it? It says, I thought that the plan to repave Morris and redevelop the Borough Hall was passed as a bipartisan decision. Can you clarify this?
Well, this isn't a political issue. This has nothing to do with politics. We have, there's 5, Democrats on council, 2 Republicans, but we don't look at these issues as being bipartisan. We look at what's right for the town. They were passed, but I think the real issue, we all support renovating the Borough Hall. I want to make that clear. Mm-hmm. It is somewhat of an embarrassment to the town, and we want it done. We want it done right, but we also want it done fiscally responsible. Now, going back to the issue of the estimates in place, when someone came to me and said it's going to cost me $375 a square foot to build a commercial building, I'd be thrown out the door, and I would be, even if I was hired, I'd be fired. So there's just a very needs to be focused on this issue. We need the right people that know commercial construction on the subcommittees for the Borough Hall, and we'll get it done. We'll get it done as cost effectively as possible. But right now, the committee doesn't have the skill sets, and they're all great people. They're all volunteers, and the volunteer spirit is great. All our opponents are great people in town. But you've got to get people on these committees that have the skill sets to advance the program. And we don't have to do that.
So Chris, speak to this comment. Actually, during the Borough Hall expansion presentation, it was said that the project would be paid for with future ratables as well as other anticipated projects. Now the Speedway ratable just disappeared. Can you speak to that?
It's true. I mean, they're basically spending money before it's in the bank. So as I mentioned before, it'd be great if the assisted living was open paying taxes. They're not. The Wawan Hotel, they haven't even passed the ordinance. It's been 2 years. So the ratable flow will happen if we're elected, and I'll make sure, we will make sure it happens. But there's absolutely needs to be a focus on the businesses on 46. The Speedway's going, and you look along 46. The animal hospital is looks like it's dead. The used cars guy next to the car wash, he looks like he's going out of business. No one's been in touch with these property owners to say, let's work together on a vision for your properties. We will do that. And I've done it with the properties already that I know are I'll call it the low-hanging fruit, that we've advanced quickly into a clear vision of when those ratables will hit our books. But there's tons of other properties, and it's a lot of work. You got to sit down with the property owners. You got to understand what a developer is willing to build, and match the property with what the market conditions dictate. And that hasn't been done. And we'll do that.
Okay, just one before we moved on to shared services, and I'm going to start with you, Nate, on that topic, but I do want to ask a question here that was just posted. Will all of you pledge that if you win a seat on the council, you will have no financial interest in any future development proposal?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the answer is yes. All right, so let's move on to shared services here, which we know is an efficient way to leverage services and costs right across different departments within the town. Lately, that has been really in question and needs to be revitalized. And I know you guys want to talk about that, Nate. I want to start with you about the shared services issue.
Sure, Ian, thank you. And yeah, the shared services, I think, I'd like to kind of just start off talking about what it is. A lot of people look at the shared services and they think it's just, oh, we're going to partner up with someone and save money. And it's a little bit more than that. A proper shared services, when you're partnering up with one or more entity, you're doing it so that it's a win-win, right, for everyone involved, and that you can start getting some savings through a couple different buckets, right? And the two primary buckets that you're going to look for savings while you're improving the quality of service that you were receiving before, right? It's not about decreasing quality just to save money. It's about increasing, or at very minimum, maintaining quality of service for the residents. So there's two main buckets. One bucket we can look at is human resources. And the human resources bucket is, again, we're a small business. We're $10 million. That's not a large company. If you're looking at this, I know this is a borough, not a company, but a few principles apply. One of them is you can only have so many staff or headcount to do the type of work at the DPW, right? It's just a matter of money. There's never enough money to go around, no matter how much you have, it seems. And so what you end up with, and what I used to do when I used to go into these very large, Fortune 100 companies, when we would go into these big transformations, is we would tell them, look, you all are staffed to do, for lights on activities, right? That's basic business, daily operations, but you're not staffed to go through and do these very large transformations or large projects, we'll call them. And so usually when you staff a company, right? And you have ups and downs, and you kind of staff for that average. But if you add big projects like Borough Hall or the beaches, you end up with a huge spike. And then the idea of being able to catch up with all the work you left behind on the backside of that, that hill kind of falls away, because now you've backed up so much work and it's into such a state, it's going to take you even longer. So then you're into the next hill before you even cleaned up, what that low period of work was supposed to be. So what you do is you enter into an agreement with another entity that has skill sets, or a similar DPW in this case, that you can team up with. And so what you do is now you double your headcount, so to speak. And so now when you're working through these projects, you can leverage and lean on each other. So instead of these huge swings, now you get kind of a more even up and down, because you're sharing those resources. And that's just for the humans, the human resources side. And you get skill sets. In a small team, it's hard to get deep skill sets in every single area that you need. It's very expensive sometimes, especially for some of the specialized skill sets. So if you can share that with somebody else, they have it on their side, we have this specialist, and you kind of share each other, you're both winning. The other side of this is capital assets. Now, to run a town like this, you need certain equipment, you need certain kinds of trucks, you need certain kinds of tools, you need certain kinds of access to different resources. Right? And those are expensive. And some of those assets might sit around for a good portion of the year, but it's not so much that you can just go out and rent it. You're going to use it a little bit more than that. So it's worth buying. So you kind of invest in these big assets. If you're teaming up with someone else who has that, you can then split that out. Now you're only covering half that asset. Or if it's more than one entity, you can break it down even further. And so I think the shared services, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think everyone was disappointed. And I mean, everyone was disappointed when it fell apart with the Board of Education. As everybody knows, there's been a lot going on with the Board of Education. And so, as they made it clear on some of their calls, they're struggling with some finances that were on discussion, in the public meetings. And the borough is obviously, it's, again, a small company. There's a win-win there that worked for years that just unfortunately, timing and other things kind of fell apart. I'd like to see that rebuilt. I'd like to see that go in, and that's not the only place that we can do a shared services model, right? There's an opportunity here for instance, our police department. A number of years ago, there was an effort underway to do a study where, could we partner up with, say, Boonton Township? And what that would do is put us into about 8,500, 9,000 resident bucket pool, which would compare us to other towns like Boonton or Chatham, right? So we have about 21 police officers on staff right now. And so what we could do then, we have 5 coming up. We have 5 officers coming up for retirement. It's a good time to re-enter into those negotiations because we could get away with 26 total officers, right, in Mountain Lakes. I'm sorry, I said 21 officers that we have. We have 13, excuse me. But there's 13 here and 13 in Boonton Township. That's 26 officers. But a similarly sized borough like Chatham or Boonton has 21 officers. That's a $600,000 savings, over that rough. That's over $300,000 per town that they could save. And it's not about giving up control. We use shared services with the fire department for us to maintain the apparatus and fire team, because again, everyone around here is volunteer, would be cost prohibitive. But what we do is we have 2 engines on at the department. When there's a fire, we go out, and if it's a real call, Boonton comes over, Boonton Township comes over, Rainbow Lakes comes over, Mount Tabor and other teams come in automatically. We could use something like that maybe with the police force, right? So that we could staff for normal business during the day, but we could have those resources to call upon if there's an emergency, if there's injury leave, if there's other types of things, then you kind of cushion that human resource model and share those resources. And I don't know what the exact answer is, but I think we need to move in that direction. We need to really seriously engage in those discussions because they amount to real savings for the borough.
Excellent. Okay, Chris, you want to weigh in on that quickly, and then I'm going to go to you, Jane.
Sure. I mean, I think, the one thing that I'd like to bring up is, and this kind of falls into the Borough Hall project, but change is inevitable with construction projects, but the Board of Ed elected to move out of the municipal building. Why? No idea. But, obviously they have a new facility. It may have just been, efficiency on their end, but we haven't changed our Borough Hall plans since the Board of Ed moved out. We've issued a bond referendum for $4.4 million, and we have thousands of square feet of space now that have been vacated, and there hasn't been a discussion at council about what is the change impact on that project. We got a major debt service that we're going to be paying on this project, and there really has to be a focus on, this shared service concept between the Board of Ed and the town. It's just fallen off a cliff, right? So, again, I'm not sure if moving out is a function of that, but it does get back to this concept of saying we now have to reevaluate the municipal building, given the fact that we have a tenant that just moved out. It's not coming back. So.
Jane, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with Nate. Bringing back these opportunities for shared services within our town. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that, the Board of Ed will hire an outside company to remove a tree on their property when we've got the equipment and the staff here to do it. So with our DPW team. So that certainly makes a lot of sense. But and the other thing I'd like to see happen though, in terms of services, is that we reach out and we locate and bring in another internet service provider. I mean, the fact that we are here in Mountain Lakes, I'm sure a majority of our residents are working from home. We have children, we have our high school that's online, and we have one internet provider. Okay. We can do better than that. We've got to get some better services, and our borough manager, working with him, we've got to do a better job at bringing us into, the century of online services. We also used to have a ability to pay our water bill and our sewer bill online. That stopped 3 years ago. I mean, why? I mean, we have residents that are snowbirds and they go to Florida and, or another state, and they can't pay their bills online. How ridiculous is it? You can pay your electric bill, you can pay your gas bill. Why can't you pay these other bills from your utility bills online? So we got to get that back up and running. That's just shameful that service stopped 3 years ago.
Okay, Richard, a last word on shared services, please.
I think Chris, Jane, and Nate really said it well. This is a discussion that needs to be had because the truth is that the council currently is responsible for the erosion of the shared services agreement. And like Nate said, this is a great opportunity not only to reduce costs, but to improve quality of service. And you need to be able to have these tough conversations, again, about what you want versus what you need. And I think that leads, again, towards the next discussion of management of resources, which I know we're going to get to in a bit. But this is one of the key parts of fiscal responsibility, is looking for value in these areas. And Chris, Jane, Nate, and I think are the team to do it.
Okay, so you're right. We are going to talk about management of resources next. We've touched on it several times, each of you have. But Nate, I'm going to throw this to you again to start. It just seems lately you guys have had more spending with less noticeable improvements around town. And each of you have mentioned sort of seeing things going downhill. You want to talk about a better management of resources, Nate?
Yeah, and I think the key concept here is no matter how big of a company I work for, and I've worked for one of the the big four firms. I've had my own business, $3 million a year business. So I've seen the ups and downs. I've been in and out of a lot of regional businesses. I've been, I've seen a lot, hospitals, cable providers, pharmaceutical companies. I've seen a lot. And no matter what company I'm working with or working for, there's never enough money. And really what it comes down to, one of my mentors, I think, I remember what she said best was, it's not about having enough money. It's about a matter of priorities, right? If you want it, if you can make it, if you do get your priorities straight, there's enough money. And I think that's the answer here. And so to see the spending go up so high, but see some of the quality of life things that I moved to town for, the beautiful parks, the garden club, bless them, they have the nicest, arrangements in town. And then you can definitely tell what the DPW, and I don't mean to beat up on these guys, because again, like I mentioned, they're getting pulled all over the place. But, you can tell what the garden club's taking care of versus what the town's taking care of. And you'll see things like last fall. I mean, you'd slip and fall going over to Hapgoods because there's so many leaves all over the place. You walk down the street and it's, the storm gutters are just packed full of leaves. And I just really seen it go downhill over on Beachway and Melrose. You couldn't hardly see the stop sign because the grass and stuff was so tall in front of it. And you just see this all over town. And I think it comes down to priorities. And I think Richard said it, earlier, is it's a matter of getting down to the basics. You got to take care of the basics. Once the basics are taken care of, then you start allocating funds for some of these other areas. And something I think is a priority is the boulevard. The path on the boulevard, the trees, since I've lived here for the last 12 years and I've been coming here for 20, that's the marquee of the town. And there seems to be no long-term plan for what's going on with those trees. It's like one year they put in one kind of tree, another year they put another kind of tree in. The trees are going to be all different sizes and shapes. The path is, it's just the grass alongside of it, if you can even call it grass. And that's what we see kind of elsewhere in town. It's a matter of priority. I want Borough to get back to the basics, taking care of the things that make it worthwhile, because we do pay a lot of taxes that increase our property values and to make this the beautiful place that we all know and love. Great. Jane, can you weigh in on that as well, please?
Yeah, no, I agree 100% in terms of making things a priority. And, one of the things we really need to take a look at too is being a priority with our local electric company, JCP&L, First Energy. I mean, I can't tell you, with this last storm being out of power for five days, and longer for some sections of town, and then the cleanup, days after, with the shrubs and the large trees that took forever. And granted, our DPW was working around the clock and they brought in other crews, but we need to be like, how many times can we put up with our power going out and these little big storms and these little power outages that we experience day after day? let's get on their radar and let's become a priority at the utility companies, along with, again, I'm going to say internet providers. Let's make Mountain Lakes a priority for these companies.
Great. Richard, can you weigh in? And then I'll go to Chris as a last voice on this issue.
Sure. I'd like to echo what Nate said. It really is about prioritization. And I really do think that question of want versus need is so crucial here. But I would just like to ask one question for this topic, and for those listening, and take a look around, and knowing that our budget has gone from 8 million to 10 million, what have you got for that $2 million? I've been playing avoid the pothole on Morris. People have been walking and the grass is growing too high near signs. That's so far what we've gotten with an increase in spending and increase in taxes. That's not proper management of resources. Nate's right. We need to prioritize. We need to have honest and tough discussions about this topic.
Great. Chris, to you finally on this issue.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic that we have to focus in on. So as we all in the borough just got to notice that our DPW hours are being decreased to save tax dollars. On the flip side, our opponents are saying they're saving so much money by having our DPW guys run these construction projects. So our DPW should not be running construction projects. I mean, the fact is, I do this for a living. DPW has a job to do, and that's maintaining our infrastructure. They should have nothing to do with managing construction projects in town. And I'm saying it, if I get elected, that is absolutely off limits. And now, I take care of my lawn. I cut my grass, I rake my leaves, and shutting hours down at the DPW, I don't know where this came from. I don't remember it ever being discussed at the borough council meetings. I may be wrong. I don't attend all of them. But now to say we're going to decrease services while our opponents are saying we're using DPW to do these other projects, it makes no sense to me.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Mountain Lakes, really a long-term vision, right, of Mountain Lakes. So, historically, this has been a town that's multi-generational. You guys have each talked about that, families raising their children, those children coming back, raising their families, and, people staying for the long haul. But now, this is not just an issue in the state of New Jersey, right? The exodus is an issue in Mountain Lakes where people are raising their children, they're graduating from high school, and then it just becomes too expensive and you're finding people are leaving, and it's really changing the fabric of the town. So what kind of changes would you make to sort of, stem this tide and turn it around? And Richard, I want to start with you.
Sure. And Elizabeth, you couldn't be more right. Mountain Lakes is, and has always been, a multi-generational community. And now we're seeing it become a transactional one. And we need to have a tough conversation about why. It's because we are the 5th highest property taxes in the state of New Jersey. It's because for the last 4 years, we've seen our taxes go up and spending go up. And if we want to create a financial ecosystem that allows the next generation of Lakers to move in once they come back from college or when they come back from first 3 years of a work, we need to provide them with that opportunity. And some of those changes that we have to see made are exactly what we've been talking about all night. We need to start taking ratables to cap taxes and spending. And I know some people have been saying, well, that's exactly the only way you can do it. That's what they're used for. Well, if that's the case, then how come the council hasn't been doing that? And to Chris's point, we need to have a financial ecosystem that allows businesses to come to Route 46, to attract them. And like Nate and Jane said, we need then to look at the businesses that fit the integrity of Mountain Lakes. Mountain Lakes has always been a multi-generational community, and that's one of its strengths. And to see that change is a real shame. And I know we're not going to let that happen.
Nate, would you like to weigh in on that as well, please?
I would. And I think, this kind of leads back to the previous topic is, prioritization for our resource allocation. The second part of that is because when you have very limited resources, and I think all of us know this because we have to do this at home in our private lives, but it works great for business as well, is you need that long-term plan to start chipping away and planning ahead. You need a 5, 10, 15-year plan of what you want things to look like. And you have to march toward that every year. And that's how you move mountains, because you can't move mountains with $10 million. But you can move mountains if every year you're working towards that and you're you're placing this project here because in 6 months you got to do this, and in 2 years you got to do this, and in 10 years this has to happen, and everything starts falling into line, and you get more efficient. So instead of paving a road and then cutting into it 2 weeks later to get to the water main, maybe we should fix things like that are under the street before we pave the roads. And again, I'm not beating up on the DPW. I know, and these people put a lot into our community, but they're getting pulled all over the place. And it takes oversight from the board, which is what the borough council, what they're supposed to provide is that kind of oversight, maintaining these long-term plans. Again, we're not going to change all the trees on our marquee and change the walking path overnight, but over 5-10 years, if we plant the right trees, and if we maintain the grass, and if we maybe widen the path a little bit because of COVID, we need a little more space with people going different ways, and we plan into these things, they become very doable and very achievable.
Chris, can you weigh in on the multi-generational aspect of Mountain Lakes? It seems to be changing.
Yeah, I mean, this is all about the taxes and revenue. I mean, we look at what's happened in Mountain Lakes over the last 3 years. We've seen spending increase, and more importantly, we've seen our home values decrease. And I think, my wife's a realtor. I get to play-by-play every day. We've had a nice little COVID rebound over the last 6 months, but also Suburbia has. But our home values are down 9.1% over the last 3 years based on the median home value in Mountain Lakes. So you always used to buy a house and you could live in it. You would pretty much bank on appreciation as your biggest asset. When we keep raising taxes and our property values drop, that's a tsunami that any town really can't survive. And people will move out of that town when those two factors occur. And that's supply and demand. We'll see, home values continue to go down because taxes go up. And so the solution is simple. We've talked about all night long. We need to stabilize our taxes. That every single time you decrease your taxes, your home values go up. The math is simple. We all know the mortgage math. So that to me is the solution. And that's what, I'm focused on is revenue, getting taxes down.
Right. Jane, your point of view on this?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And with that, we have to spend within our means. We just can't be spending money, knowing that, money's coming in the future. We have what we have today, and we have to plan and spend what we've got and manage our financial resources sensibly. I mean, and that's what Laker sensibility is all about, right? Bringing fiscal responsibility, bringing in those tax dollars, but minding that budget, and making sure we're spending our community, our residents' tax dollars wisely and sensibly.
Great. Okay. So I just want to touch on the Mountain Lakes Club. It was mentioned just a couple of times, and I'm just going to ask you, Chris, to weigh in on the, the status of this. It's a historic building. It's an icon in Mountain Lakes. And of course, now it's in foreclosure, and there's some issues regarding that. Can you just weigh in on behalf of all of the candidates regarding the point of view about the club? Absolutely.
So all four of us strongly support the Mountain Lakes Club. I mean, we know it's one of the great resources in town. I was a member there, loved the place, and I moved on. Generally as your kids get older, a lot of families move off. I'm not a very good bowler, but in any event, we want it to stay. What we don't support is spending millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to bail it out. There are other creative solutions, and I've discussed this internally about how do we get the Mountain Lakes Club for angel investors to come in and try to revitalize the club as it exists. And it's a challenging issue. You have residents across the street, you've got a school next to it, you've got a vacant lot on the other side. But my solution would be with the swipe of a pen, we can, at the council level, we can monetize that property through looking at the underlying zoning. Right now it's zoned single family. And there may be an opportunity to look at that and upzone it slightly to give a bank or financial institution the resources, or excuse me, the appraisal, so to back into a loan that can be monetized. Not a single taxpayer dollar. It saves the club, and it gives someone the ability to finance that facility. So that's one creative solution. This is a very delicate subject. I'd love to hear other creative solutions out there, but it certainly, our focus is going to be to save the club.
Okay, thanks, Chris. All right, well, you guys have all given incredible information and certainly a lot for the residents to think about. All of this means nothing if we don't vote, though, right? So we can talk all night long, and if people don't cast their ballots, it's all for naught. So I would be remiss if we didn't land on, as a final issue here, mail-in voting. And I'm going to ask Richard to please talk about that, educate anybody who isn't aware specifically how we need to do this correctly. Richard, can you take that?
Sure. So I know that in this COVID world, we are now forced to vote by mail-in ballot only, but there are still options for everybody, and hopefully everyone has received their ballot at this point. So once you fill it out, you can either bring it to a drop box in Danville or Parsippany's Municipal Building. You can send it in the mail, or on election day, you can drop it off at a drop box at the high school. And for anyone that has more questions, we have a great video with a great candidate on our Laker Sensibility Facebook page for any more questions.
Absolutely. So they can go to lakersensibility.com, and it is .com, yes, .com, and see that video. Also remember, you can track your ballot. So if you're worried about it being received, you can track it. So make sure you watch that video and get all of that information. Before we close out, I would like each of you to have one last word to your potential constituents, to tell them what to remember, what's most important about what you've said tonight, and we'll leave that with them. And once we're done, I would ask that each of you would go back, if there are any unanswered questions in the feed, that you would address those as you can. So Chris, let's go ahead and start with you as a last message to everyone.
Sure. First of all, thank everybody for taking the time to try to get to know us. Again, love this town. I'm going to fight for this town. I'm going to deliver the ratables and give us the ability to lower your taxes. I have the skill sets to do it as compared to our opponents. I've delivered the ratables. They have not. If they had the skill sets to deliver the ratables, they would have done that. They have not delivered a single project from the developing community to council. So if you want to vote for the person and the team that is going to continue to do what they've done, please vote for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us tonight. You know, in 2012, I was honored to receive the Citizen of the Year Award among my committee members for our work on the Mountain Lakes Centennial Steering Committee. And that award honors Mountain Lakes citizens who by their actions have shown themselves to be assets to this community. Well, I promise you, if I'm elected and our team's elected to Borough Council, we'll continue to be an asset to Mountain Lakes. We'll restore fiscal responsibility by ensuring we are spending your tax dollars within our means. We'll govern openly and transparently, and we'll be accountable to you, our taxpayers. And we'll work with our DPW and borough resources to maintain the natural beauty and architecture of this and the history of Mountain Lakes. And we'll endorse policies that are mindful of our environment and our historic designation. So it's your money, it's your future, and together, let's ensure Mountain Lakes continues to be that special place we all call home. And thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Jane. Great. Richard, a final word to everyone, please.
Sure. Thank you, Elizabeth, for moderating tonight. And thank you to everyone who stuck around with us and listened to us talk about these issues. You know, in my family, we like to say that decisions are made by those who show up. Now, there are those who would say I'm too young to be on the Borough Council, or that I lack the experience. And when I hear these criticisms, I immediately think of the teachings of the late Doug Wilkins, who I had the honor of having as my principal my freshman year of high school, and then as a valued mentor and friend in later years. Now, Coach Wilkins used to always say, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And anyone who knew Coach Wilkins would tell you that hard work was the cornerstone from which all success flowed. Now, the Borough Council is often asked to engage in questions where many members often don't have any professional experience. But we expect that they will work to educate themselves on the issue and provide a solution. On this, I can promise you our entire team will not fail. Our council needs to be as great as the people who work in this town and the people who live in this town. and we will all work every day to make sure that becomes a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And Nate, finally, give us a last word for everyone, please.
Yes, and thank you everyone for watching tonight and getting to know us. I look forward to bumping into you. Reach out to us if you have any questions. It's a small town. We're going to see each other on the streets. We're going to pass each other, and that's what this is about. That's why we love Mountain Lakes. That's why we want to run for council. We want to give back, and I think we do that best. This team is with some responsible economic development that's going to maintain the character and the soft, genuine charm of Mountain Lakes, and the prioritization of how we're spending our monies and looking for creative ways to spend it more wisely so that we can work towards lowering taxes and at the same time investing in our future. So thank you. And I'd ask, you vote for us, but most importantly, vote. I think that's the most important thing, takeaways. Definitely vote, get those ballots filled out and get them in. I think it's the most important thing you can do. You
took my last line, Nate, which was vote. Right? That was the close, vote. But you guys have been amazing. Again, everyone can go to LakerSensibility.com to learn more about the candidates. Please don't forget, in all the noise out there, that your local politics impacts your life more than anything. Be very careful, get to know your candidates, understand what they stand for. And tonight has been a wealth of information to that end. And I thank you so much. The candidates, I'm sure, will be available to answer questions, I'm sure, via email or any other way, and clearly they're happy to share their views with you. So I thank you guys, Chris, Richard, Nate, and Jane. You have been amazing. Everyone that stayed with us for this hour, thank you. Thank you for caring about your town. That's what makes America a great country. So everybody, vote, 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 and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank
you, Elizabeth. Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Please vote for us. Thank you.